Go get 'em, boys. All right. Welcome. All right, what we got going on here? Interesting new action here. Let's see what's going on. Here we go. South Israel, Jerusalem. We have quite a view here. Quite a view here. Look at here. Zooming in here. Looks pretty peaceful at the moment. Looks pretty peaceful there at the moment. This is at the Wailing Wall. The sun about to come up over here too. Looks like sun's coming up over here. You got sunrise. Oh, they're early. Look how early people get here. That's pretty cool. So we're following this here. And the chair stacked up there. there a separate side for the women, I think. Wow, that's what that is. So that separates the women from the men. So this is the woman's side. This is the men's side. I don't understand the separation. See how close can we get here? How close in can we get? Can get pretty close. Moving out way here. Let's monitor our other cameras. Monitoring our other cameras. Airspace looks pretty clear at the moment. South Israel, this is the Gaza area. Oh, I can hear that music, I don't like it. I don't like that music. Interesting, interesting. Very interesting here. Let's take a look at this world map. And pan across. What else is going on in the world? Let's see here. Oh, that's interesting. I've been there a few times. All brushed up and clean. You can see the LED lights inside. Interesting. What is this? Salt Lake City torch cam. Oh, Statue of Liberty. What the heck is wrong with me? Did I just say Salt Lake City? What's happening to me? Oh, you can move it around. Oh, look at there. That's the torch cam right there. Crown cam. Let's see, let's make that large. You can like zoom in on it. Get right here. I'm zooming in on the Statue of Liberty right now. Ooh. Yep, I used to sit and look at that harbor with that city skyline. That used to be fun. There's the city. There's New Jersey. There's Ellis Island right here. Interesting. Okay, let's go into the next one. Now we're at Ellis Island. You know. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of air traffic around this area. This is more New York City, World Trade Center. Look at that. You like that? That's pretty cool. We used to ride those boats right there across the river. Ride that boat to the other side. Yep. Oh, hello. Hello, Lord. I'm just chilling. Sane. We are just looking at some various views here. What do we got here? This is an interesting cab right here. Yeah, that was pretty nice. Yeah, the sun's barely going down over there. Canada. Interesting, interesting. Dallas, Texas. Look at that. That is crazy. So flat. There's the ball. There's that ball thing. Oh, traffic. That's the new arena. It doesn't look that big. What do you do for work there besides all this stuff? The airport must be over here somewhere. Huh. Interesting. I just think I fed my own feed. Chicago Wrigley Field. I wonder if they know that they're on the webcam right now. If they're just sitting there, standing there, chit chatting. And they don't even realize Is that really thunder I'm hearing there? Thunder I'm hearing? It doesn't matter. I like it. I didn't even watch it. That's Middle East there. Oh no, that's me. Who we got here? What do we got here, y'all?
USA who are supporting in this war fully to the Israel. But the significant after this significant damage in the Israel, the censorship has been put in place all along the Israel to not mention or show any strategic location where these Iranian missiles are landing, which include is the Mossad headquarters, the air bases of Israel, which had been got the damage in the Tel Aviv as well as in the other parts of Israel. Particularly, the energy source of the Israel
It's
has
like
been
as the sun's
severely
coming up.
damaged in Haifa for last 4 days. They are not able to restart the refinery in Haifa. That is the one part of this war, and another part is that tomorrow, on the Friday, there is a significant world level meeting going on in Geneva, in which the foreign minister from Tehran will be visiting, and also the representatives from the UK as well as Germany and France are participating in that meeting. And this meeting is being organized by the USA, and this will decide the future course of this ongoing war. The Iran has made its intentions clear, as the Supreme Leader yesterday came on the TV in a video statement. He said that they are going to respond if America directly indulges in this war. So Donald Trump is also changing his strategy. He is now going through the diplomatic ways and means, and also the Russian President Putin has given a statement where he said that he has talked with the Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, as well as with the President of the Iran, and both have assured them that they will go through the diplomatic means. In fact, there are some scientists and the employees of the Russian countries who are working in some of the nuclear facilities of Iran, and that is the concern with the Putin, and that is why he has taken the word from the Benjamin Netanyahu that their countrymen, the Russian scientists and Russian employees will not be targeted by Israel. So that seems the big development in this ongoing war. But as far as the tit for tat attacks from Israel to the Iran and Iran to Israel, they are going on. Basically, the supreme leader of the Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khomeini, made it clear that every attack will be responded with the equal quantum, and this strike will be the more severe. There will be no mercy. That means that now, when the hospital is being targeted by the Israel in the Tehran targets the hospital in the Israel, as we have seen in the energy and the oil reserves. When the Israel first targeted the oil refineries of the Iran responded with the targeting the oil refineries of the Israel in Haifa. So this is a tit for tat going on. How it could stop? Iran's foreign minister has made it clear that if the Israel will
Right.
pause its attacks, its aggression on the Iran will stop responding to those
That's
attacks.
right. You know, Ashraf, I just want you to put this into perspective for us, even as we stay with these pictures, just speaking volumes of how really Iran is breaching
Wallets and cloud-based seed phrase backups are tied to email credentials, making them vulnerable to account takeovers and potential asset loss.
Now, experts are warning that this breach could lead to a surge in phishing account hijacking and identity theft, especially in sectors like crypto, finance, and cloud-based services. The FBI and Google are now urging users to replace traditional passwords with passkeys and to immediately enable two-factor authentication. Now, organizations are advised to audit their access protocols, revoke compromised credentials, and inform users of potential risks. As researchers put it, this isn't just a breach, it's a blueprint for global cyber exploitation.
Let me know how you assess this chessboard here, particularly after we know that China was sending flights, cargo flights into Iran. What is on those planes?
Yeah, we don't know, but we know this isn't good because those planes are turning off their transponders as they approach Iranian airspace. China is sending something it doesn't want the world to know. It could be ammunition, could be drones, pretty unlikely about that, but it also could be nuclear weapons. We just don't know.
Unbelievable.
当前中东地区局势紧张敏感，面临失控的风险。中方反对任何违反联合国宪章宗旨和原则、侵犯别国主权安全和领土完整的行为，反对在国际关系中使用或威胁使用武力。国际社会，特别是有影响力的大国，应秉持公正立场和负责任态度，为推动停火止战、重回对话谈判创造条件，避免地区局势滑向深渊，引发更大的灾难。
There's no certainty that we would be successful. There's some level of confidence. The president would have to factor that into his decision making, that these massive bombs would do the trick and destroy Iran's nuclear program.
Yeah.
But beyond that, the day after, what happens with Iran? Do they double down on their relationships with Iran, with China and with North Korea and Russia to try to stay in power and rebuild a nuclear
Where was that? That was
program? The day after is also critically important.
Well, what do you make of the? I want to get back to the bombs
You can see how
and
the
bunker buster in a moment.
zooming
But what
in
do
there.
you make of China? As we know that China has been transporting planes into Iran. We don't know what's on these planes, but what can you tell us in terms of China perhaps being complicit here, supporting Iran?
Now, China and Iran signed a strategic partnership deal back in 2021. Russia signed one in 2021.
China.
This is this century's axis of dictatorships.
See, China, I think that we made China's actually acting quite differently here in this thing.
Axis of tyranny, where Iran is so closely aligned with those nations. China relies on Iran for their hydrocarbons, for oil, as well as from Russia. And they've been busting sanctions.
That's a
that the
problem.
Chinese have, and they see
I think
an
we've also
opportunity to
seen an
maintain their
uptick in
influence. This is an
oil
ally of
prices.
theirs in the Middle East that they don't want to lose. And so for sure that it's not just about diplomatic top cover. Behind the scenes, China and Russia are spying on the United States, and I'm quite sure they're sharing that intelligence with the Iranians so that Iran can seek to make the best decisions possible.
Right, let's return to our top story now, where the conflict between Israel and Iran is ongoing. And we have Al Jazeera's Ali Hashim joining us live now from the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. Ali, we're getting reports of a warning from Iraq's Shia leader Ali Sistani against any US aggression against Iran. What more do we know?
Well, this was a statement, and this is the second time this statement is being issued by the highest Shia religious body, which is represented by Ayatollah Ali Sistani in Najaf. This statement mainly condemned the Israeli attack on Iran, but the main point and the main line here is that it warned of the consequences of harming the leadership of Iran. We know the supreme leader of Iran, besides being a leader of a country, a political leader, he is a religious authority, and he's alongside with Ayatollah Sistani, they are the most senior religious leaders of the Shiite Muslim sect in the world. So what Sistani said in this statement is that there's going to be a chaos in case there's any harm to this leadership.
You have a new op-ed on how Israel just ended China's power status in the Middle East. Very interesting.
Yeah, if we go back to March 2023, it looked like China brokered that deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Last year in July, China got 14 Palestinian factions to go to Beijing to sign what's called the Beijing Declaration, the Unity Pact. So we were sort of on the back foot. But with President Trump going to the region last month, that's really triumphal trip, and Israel targeting Iran, which is China's proxy. The Iranians don't think they're a proxy of anyone, but the Chinese think Iran is a proxy. And China's been fully supporting Iran's attack on Israel. So right now, China's policies in the Middle East are just in tatters.
Someone referenced this is like Hitler losing Italy during the 1940s.
I don't know. This is one of the
But basically, it's in the light of what we would call a global crisis of global proportions that the Bible says there will be introduced a new way of life. He tells us that there'll be this charismatic, unifying leader who will promise, according to Paul to the Thessalonians, peace and safety.
This is a statement from the Secretary General, and I'll read it to you in the first person. I remain profoundly alarmed by the ongoing military escalation in the Middle East between Israel and Iran. I reiterate my call for the immediate de-escalation leading to a ceasefire. I strongly appeal to all to avoid any further internationalization of the conflict. Any additional military interventions could have enormous consequences, not only for those involved, but for the whole region and for the international peace and security at large. I condemn this tragic and unnecessary loss of lives and injuries,
Middle East news events right now,
homes and critical civilian infrastructure. Diplomacy remains the best and only way to address concerns regarding Iran's nuclear programs and regional security issues. The UN Charter remains our shared framework to save people from the scourge of war. I urge all member states to comply fully with the Charter and international law, including international humanitarian law.
It's particularly this word peace or safety in the original, which means stability,
peace and safety,
security,
is what they say,
from enemies and dangers. That there'll be this one who will say, I'm going to fix everything that's wrong and make it all work the way it's supposed to.
You hang in with me that 1%, Richie.
The Israeli Prime Minister came here today and said that Israel is surrounded by those who want to destroy it, an enemy. We're here, members of a Muslim Arab committee.
Everybody's got to be
mandated by
watching what's going
57
on here.
Arab and
It's
Muslim
real
countries.
important.
And I can tell you here, very unequivocally, all of us are willing to, right now, guarantee the security of Israel in the context of Israel ending the occupation and
Are we moving
allowing for the
closer
emergence
to
of a Palestinian
Ezekiel
state,
here?
independent state along the
That's the question.
efforts that we all agree. He is creating that danger because he simply does not want the two-state solution. And if he does not want the two-state solution, can you ask Israeli officials what is their end game? I'm telling you, all of us in the Arab world here, we want a peace in which Israel lives in peace and security, accepted, normalized with
Peace
all
and
Arab countries
security.
in the
Peace and security. You guys hear that? Peace and security. Peace and security. How is it that peace and security? You guys understand what these words mean?
this context of ending the occupation, withdrawing from Arab territory, allowing for the emergence of an independent sovereign Palestinian state on June 4, 1967, lies occupied Jerusalem as capital. That is our security in that context. Can you ask Israelis what's their narrative other than I'm going to continue to go to war, I'm going to kill this and kill that and destroy this and this that? The amount of damage that Israeli government to convince people that peace is possible, this Israeli government killed it. The amount of dehumanization, hatred, bitterness will take generations to navigate through. So ultimately the question is, we want peace and we've laid out a plan for peace. Ask any Israeli official.
They say we want peace, but I think it was them that was saying death to Israel, death to the United States, all that stuff, right? Interesting. It's very interesting sometimes.
What is their plan for peace? You'll get nothing because they're only thinking of the first step we have to destroy Gaza, inflame the West Bank, destroy Lebanon, and after that they have no plan. We have a plan. We have no partner for peace in Israel. There is a partner for peace in the Arab world, and that's why the international community needs to move.
It's also interesting, and I think not just coincidentally, that one of the first things the United Nations did was declare that Israel was a nation. And that has led to all sorts of interesting complications.
Does anybody know that 1946 was it, or 1948, 1946, they declared Israel as a nation? Very, very interesting that that happened at that time.
Nations in the world today, which we'll talk about later on.
But Matt, Iran has kicked out IAEA inspectors. There could be portions of their nuclear program in the Middle East. How about it? If the world is interested in a secret nuclear program in the Middle East,
I don't know about this guy,
there is
though.
a country that won't allow any international inspectors. Israel.
Matt
Israel
Gates
has
is
a
a
nuclear
little
weapon.
much for me. I
Did you
don't
know that? I do.
I'm not so sure about this
They
guy.
allow no inspections. They are fully secretive and clandestine about it. And the Americans are fully aware. You know
he's
what?
all
I don't
right,
even
but-
blame Israel for this. If they want to develop a nuclear weapon, if they had the blessing to do so secretly, I'm not in judgment of that. But to drag the world into a regime change war over secret nuclear weapons, when you have secret nuclear weapons, is a bit hypocritical. So here's the deal. How about Iran and Israel both give up their secret nuclear weapon programs? If Trump got that deal, he wouldn't only get the Nobel Peace Prize, they'd probably name it the Trump Peace Prize forever. Denuclearize it.
But this concern, I think, was best expressed
This
by
guy.
the man who, in my early generation or early lifetime, was the most famous and trusted news broadcaster and journalist in the entire United States, if not around the world, a man by the name of Walter Cronkite. Most people don't realize that in 1999, he spoke at the United Nations, and he received the Norman Cousins Global Governance Award. He received an award for being the one who had worked the hardest in that year to push forward the idea of one world government based upon the United Nations. In that speech, listen to what he says. It seems to many of us that if we are to avoid the eventual catastrophe.
And this is a while back. You got to keep in mind, this is a while back. This is not recently said. Like, we got to keep this in mind. when we're talking about these things here. I mean,
catastrophic world conflict. In other words, people concerned about nuclear war and war beyond anything we'd ever experienced. If we're going to avoid it, we must strengthen the United Nations as a first step towards a legislature, executive and judiciary and police force to enforce international laws and to keep the peace. To do that, of course, we Americans will have to yield up some of our sovereignty. In other words, the idea that we are an independent nation state. We have to get over that and move on. That would be a bitter pill, he admitted. It would.
Hold on a second. What did he just say? I'm not sure I like that or I agree with that.
To do that, of course, we Americans will have to yield up some of our sovereignty. In other words, the idea that we are an independent nation state. We have to get over that and move on.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't really like that. I must say I'm not a big fan of that statement there. I don't know about that. You know, I don't know. We'll see.
That would be a bitter pill, he admitted. It would take a lot of courage, a lot of faith in the new world order. This leader will come in a wake of the time. People will believe that he's the one, and Revelation gives us some indication of how he accomplishes these things. But we're also warned that rather than bringing the peace and safety that he promises, it says it will be a time of sudden destruction. Olithros in the Greek, the word destruction there literally means ruin and death and destruction. That in his path will be horrible consequences. In fact, he's a ruler, we're told in Revelation 6, who is not bent on peace, but rather, he tells us, he is bent on conquest. Daniel, in fact, goes on to say that he will devour the whole earth. He will trample it down and crush.
I think it's the rider with a bow and no arrows. You know, you guys remember the rider with the bow and no arrows. You know, you have the rider with the bow and no arrows. Could be. Sure,
crush it, causing astounding devastation, and he will crush and break all others.
About using so-called bunker-busting bombs that only the US has on an underground nuclear facility.
I don't know the technical danger. I'm not an expert for this. I know that there is a danger in which America can get us involved in a regional and maybe even in a world war. I mean, the Russians already said some things, and I don't think they can remain passive if the United States will attack their ally. So it is very explosive, very dangerous. Everyone is gambling, and nobody knows how will this gamble end. I'm very, very concerned.
Because basically,
Well, fortunately, we do know how this gamble ends. It's been laid out for us very clearly. And I would be safe to say we are pretty much in some of the times that are described in the Bible. Pretty safe to say.
I've tried to point out the desire for one world government is as old as sin itself. But it really began to get a new kind of traction after World War.
I'm glad he said that. Does anybody realize that the Tower of Babel is where this all began even? Remember that? Satan has been up to this for so long. It's not even funny.
War I. Many of us remember from our history studies. I don't know that there's any of us who were alive when it was taking place. But after World War I, there was such an incredible level of death and destruction. So in the world. That's what you have to understand. This war that was promised to be the end of all wars, in its period, killed someplace between 30 and 40 million people. Nothing like this had ever been experienced in human history. That as a result of that, the major nations of the world gathered together and said, basically, how can we avoid something like this into the future? Yeah. And they formed a governing system, what we call a one world government, which was given the name the League of Nations. And the League of Nations probably would have had some success because the idea is we have some place for countries to go and work out their differences before war breaks out. Except the Congress of the United States embraced basically an isolationist policy, so that even though our president, Woodrow Wilson, was a chief driver behind this League of Nations, he actually could not convince his own nation to support it, and it died without participation of the United States. The concern was best expressed, I think, after World War II, when again they thought, how did we end up in this place again? And many people argued, because we didn't become part of the League of Nations, that's of the League of Nations. We'll call it the United Nations. And so it was founded and formed beginning in early 1945. It was to be a more comprehensive union with more authority, more power to interfere and intervene. And interestingly, the United States was willing to put boots on the ground in order to enforce many of the things that the United Nations wanted to see addressed. Revelation reveals that before the fall and destruction of this final beast-like empire, it would continue in power for a period of 7 years. That's called the Great Tribulation, or the Tribulation.
Now, how many of you are familiar with AI? Obviously, we're all familiar with AI. Can any of us see how this could be part of possibly this system? I mean, I can see it. I can see it. But that's just me.
Actually, the tribulation is divided into two parts. The last 3.5 years are called the Great Tribulation for reasons that become fairly obvious when you read through Revelation. But basically, he's going to rule politically, where it says in Revelation, it says, who can make war against him? I mean, his governance power is so great that there's no one who can confront his power. Economically, we're told that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. In a few weeks, I'm going to tell you exactly what that is.
So you can tell us what that is. Well, why are we going to wait for that? I'd prefer to know now.
Yes, so don't miss that. But also, thirdly, religiously, when he tells us in Revelation 13, men worship the dragon because he had been given authority to the beast. And they also worship the beast and ask, who is like the beast? And he says, he causes all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. So if you won't worship, you won't, much like ancient Rome that required allegiance to the emperor, and if you didn't offer sacrifice as an evidence of your allegiance to the emperor, you were killed, so also it will be in the days of the Antichrist. That those who refuse to submit to his authority, because that's what the worship comes down to, absolute total domination and authority, will be executed. Now, the question that often arises is there any evidence that anything like this is happening today, that we are moving towards this kind of system?
It's Jason A for you guys. He's a good one to watch. He's been doing it for a minute. Let's see what the live stream looks like, guys. Seems really calm at the moment. Let's see if we can pick up on anything here. This must have been earlier. Must have been earlier. Yep. Looks like we got a lot of activity tonight. The Iron Dome trying to keep up. What's up, Big Mueller? We are covering right now the bombings here of Israel, Iran. We can see we've got some good man. I'm just chilling. I'm covering some Middle East stuff, watching some action, taking a break. Seeing how things are going here. You live pretty close to this area.